This is a Sikha from Chelik Aleph.
We got to Pesach.
And yeah, you got to get ready for Pesach.
Yeah,
It's
it is Pesach.
it's like a week and a half before Pesach. Not much time.
No. My head is.
So this is we're gonna have Pesach together with chametz. So in this Sikha, we are gonna examine two sections, two parts of the Haggadah. One is the most classic, most famous thing, the Mah Nishtana, because the Haggadah is primarily about V'yigalata levincha, telling your son. It's about you came just in time. We're just starting. It's about V'yigalata levincha, relating and telling it over to your son, and the Mah Nishtana begins that interaction. The Haggadah is an interactive trainer. It's as opposed to a whole year round. There's the idea of V'shinantam levanecha, like we speak about in Krishma, that there's a mitzvah to teach your children and to teach your students. But when it comes to the Haggadah, it's V'yigalata levincha, and because of that, we set up the Haggadah in a question and answer format. That the major part of the lead into the Haggadah is Mah Nishtana. And the Mah Nishtana has in it 4 questions. So those that are familiar with both Chabad and non-Chabad Haggadahs know that the setup of the questions in the Haggadah and Chabad is different than the order of the questions in the non-Chabad Haggadah, and the Rebbe is going to analyze it and explain it in light of the fact of the message that we're trying to communicate to the child. Because we're trying to communicate to the child, therefore the order of the questions is set up this way. That's the first thing that we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about a different topic afterwards. Mah Nishtana. That's the first topic, about Mah Nishtana. In a way you could say, that Mah Nishtana, why is our Haggadah different? Mah Nishtana alay lazem v'kol hazleilas. You ask the same question. Mah Nishtana, the Haggadah of Chabad, why is it different? Everybody always likes to ask questions. Why by Chabad do they do things differently, such and such? Say that arba kushis of Minhag Chabadu matbilin. First of all, we asked about why do we dip twice? Once the karpas in salt water, and the next time mor and charoises. Second question, the Chabad Haggadah, is the matzah. Why do we eat matzah, not chametz? Morer is the third question. Why we eat morer, not other, and not like the whole year round. And the fourth question is mesubin, about why we lean when we eat the parts of the Seder. So the Rebbe says, l'chura bilti moving. Seemingly this is not understood. How they say there's a eine masim. Loy l'chshivas anyanim v'loy l'seder efas advarim l'fnei hayelad. There are 2 ways how seemingly the Haggadah can be structured, or the Mah Nishtana can be structured. Either you can structure the Mah Nishtana according to a value system. The most important mitzvah should be first, and the least important mitzvah, something that's only a custom, should be last, as we'll soon explain. That's not the structure of the Mah Nishtana in the Chabad Haggadah. So maybe you'll say it's a very practical thing. We're trying to bring the child to ask the questions. So therefore, if we're trying to evoke questions by the child, so we have to go in the order that the child witnesses the events. So the Rebbe says also, the order that it goes over here in the Mah Nishtana, the Chabad Haggadah, also doesn't go according to what the child sees. And the Rebbe is going to explain. First of all, Aleph, matzah. That should have been the first question. Chiyuv midaraisa, that is an obligation even in the present days when we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, when we don't bring a carbon Pesach. Eating matzah is a Torah obligation. Beis maror is midrabanan bizman hazeh. These days, where we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we don't have the carbon Pesach, we know that the maror is only done as a rabbinic obligation. So therefore, we should start first with the Torah obligation. First thing should be matzah. Second thing should be maror. Gimel, the third thing should be mesubin. Why is that? Davar mavatas in yacheirus. That shows on freedom. That's a very core message and idea that the Pesach Seder is about. V'rakla b'soif should have been matbilin. Davar sheinen milig bavad. The fact that we dip the morer and charoises, the fact that we dip the karpas and salt water, these are all minhagim. In the importance of mitzvah, seemingly, Minat Torah should come first, the Rabbanu should come second, and then the custom. That's the order that it should have been if we go according to importance. Lefi sidrei re'iyas hatefars ha'yidei ha'yelad ha'yamadbilim tzarech liyas legamri b'soif sharei ha'ikr ha'tibul ha'sheni. What's the main matbilin? When we're eating the mother and we dip it in charoises, that's the main one. So that comes after experiencing all the rest of the thing. By kiddush already we lean on our side. Even before the first dipping. So we should have, if we're going according to the order, we should have started with mesubin, and then, if anything, then go to dipping, and then speak about matzah and mother. So the Rebbe is going to bring a very important life lesson of how we are supposed to look at things. The way we're supposed to value mitzvahs does not go by, well, this says in the Torah, this is the Rabbanan, and this is only a custom. That's a wrong approach to Torah mitzvahs. Base. Yeshlam ke'ela oimrim, shemitzvahs da'iraisa, yesh lakayim, b'toikiv, ad kedei mesiras nefesh. We have to go all the way to the end, even if it means self-sacrifice. V'gam mitzvahs derabanan tzrichas liyas b'toikiv. Why mitzvahs derabanan? Kiven shein nechlolas b'mitzvah loisasur. It says in the Torah that loisasur menadvarim, you should not turn away from the matters that you will be taught. Yemin no smile, do not turn away to the right, do not turn to the left. So even fulfilling a mitzvah established by the Rabbanan is a Torah obligation. When it comes with the Chachamim make a certain decree, and they say, don't do this, so you shouldn't come to do that. So it has the power of a mitzvah min Torah, because the Torah said to listen to the Chachamim. And for sure, when it's a mitzvah of the Rabbanan, let's say washing the Tils Yadayim, lighting Shabbos candles, lighting Chanukah candles, these are all midrabanan. And still in all we say, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvahs avitzivanu. Where did Hashem command us in the Torah to light Chanukah candles? How do we say that? But because Hashem told us that we're not supposed to turn away from what the Chachamim told us to do, so it's a Torah obligation to fulfill whatever the Chachamim tells us to do. So this is all the value system of the importance of Torah and the importance of the Rabbanan. Ve'ilu minhagim harei kshem nitanim lebitzua bekalus mehechet teisa. Aval mesiras nefesh aleim ein chayva. We can look at it this way. If it's a minhag, so if it's easy, if it's simple to do a minhag, fine, I'll do the minhag. But if the minhag poses a little bit too much difficulty, then I'm going to stay away from it. Then I'm going to put it on the back burner. It's only a custom, it's only a minhag. That is a certain ideology and a certain approach, a certain philosophy. You say to Mizoim Toinim, B'shosha Kaim HaTzoyrech, L'chanech Yilodim V'derech HaToyrah, V'arei Atzlacha Malaya, Museges B'kushi Rav. It's very difficult to have 100% success in educating our children. So therefore, we might say that let's focus on the quote-unquote the more important things. Let's not make a big deal about the less important things. Kedailis alam lefam minhagim ulismaser lahachter v'toykev l'gabedvarim ikrim. So the Mah Nishtana in our Haggadah comes to teach us this is not the correct approach. Klape elu, both these views, that the most important thing is Torah, and a minhag is not something we have to totally get out of our comfort zone for. And the same thing, maybe when it comes to Minhagim, let's not push it on our children. Let's just worry about what the Chachamim said, what the Torah says. So he says, Bo hayra meseder akushis. Hadavar harishon shetinik shoyel olav. Hadavar harishon shetinik chosh bayu shemasher olav roishim. Einay inyan shemidairaisa or midrabanon. Neither min Torah or not something that are common Torahs. Ela minhag Yisrael hu hadavar she'ein hatinik tzada oisai. U'shemashpia alav b'midah gedola b'yoser. The first thing we talk about is dipping. That's the first question. Dipping is only a minhag. But a minhag actually attracts the child's eye. This looks out of the ordinary. I learned in Chumash about the matzah. I learned in Chumash about the mother. That's not so surprising to him. It doesn't attract him. This minhag, what's this dipping all about? That grabs his attention. Im tiyes nagas haklolis shel hayeled doimel shel hasviva halo Yehudis. So the Rebbe compares the idea of minhag to the way we run our lives in general. There's mitzvahs, and then there's the way we run our lives in general. So if a Jewish child sees, in general, I'm like the non-Jewish environment. Hare af im yikva itum l'toira, yispalel, yikayim mitzvahs v'chulum, aval ma'acher shu doime bis nagusay l'svivasay, v'loy nikar olav shu Yehudi, v'loy murgish by a hevdel ben Yisrael la'amim, ata b'chartonim kol amim, yavi hadavar l'deikach shegam b'mitzvahs shu mekayim, u'b'toira shu loimed, loy tehei murgeshes hakedusha hadrusha. There has to be the idea of Minhag Yisrael. There has to be inculcated in a Jewish child that I'm acting different. Not even things that are obligatory. I am of a different type of environment. Bekasher pogum bad my yisoid, Kedusha satoid Kedusha mitzvahs. But if the child doesn't see himself as different, he just knows that I have this and this mitzvah, but I'm like everybody else. So he's missing that foundation. If he's missing the hisnagus, the difference that he feels from a not Jewish child, so then eventually it can corrode and erode the mitzvahs even that he does. Another point that the Rebbe brings out, Gilgul, Minhag Yisrael mahavim heim atzmam Torah kemaimer. Minhag Yisrael Torah v'afilu minhag noshim. Sometimes women have like these customs, and we wonder like where it came from. It doesn't say it in Shulchan Aruch or whatever, but the Chazal say that the minhag of Yidden is considered itself a Torah, and the minhag even of women is also considered a Torah. Ulefichach ein lishkol ma'odif. You can't go ahead and start weighing things. Kakosov oira chayim pen tiflas. Do not weigh your path of life and say, this is a more important thing and this is a less important thing. Ve'ein l'chein levater al davar, and say, if I have to bend, I'll bend over here, but this I'm committed to. Hari nois v'lakach yesh kana yisoid arishon b'chinuch. Ala yelad ladas shu shoyna min hakoil, olav ladas shu Yehudi. Davar zeh musig aidei Minhag Yisrael. When a Jew's customs are different, that shows that it's more than just the mitzvahs. Ha-minhagim boiltim la'ayim, v'heim be'ikir mashrishim es atchusha shel ata b'chartonim v'kol ha'amim, davar shememenu nava v'keraftonim al kein la'v'yasecha ha'yisoid v'abos l'chol ha'toira. So first, there is the idea, the distinction, that a Jew is different than a non-Jew. Once we have that distinction that a Jew is different than a non-Jew, that ata b'chartonim v'kol ha'amim, so then it results in v'keref tonim al kein la'v'yasecha.
This is the idea that they didn't change their name in the times.
That also has to do with customs. What's the big deal? They didn't change their name, they didn't change their language, they didn't change their garment. It's only customs, it's only the way we acted. But by making ourselves distinct in the way we act, so that allows for a proper foundation and a basis that we should be able to get the Torah and fulfill the Torah in its appropriate Kedusha. It's usually used in the sense that for a person to be able to learn how to be able to become a Rav, he needs to be Meshamish Talmid Chacham. He needs to be someone that serves under, he's an intern by another Rav. And no, there's only one page. To be able to be a Rav, he can't just learn. He needs to serve under a Rav. But in the spiritual sense, the deeper sense this means, the Minhagim, the way how he acts. He has to act in a way that conforms to being completely different. Daled, top of 233, Kishemechanchim yiladim kifi aroi. Umalamdim oisim shagam Minhag Yisrael toirahim v'yesh limsar nefesh avuroi. Even for a minhag, a person needs to be completely devoted and not give up on Minhagim, even when it might not be that comfortable. Oimrim oz. What do we say right after the Mah Nishtana? Right after the Mah Nishtana, what's the response? Avodim ayinu l'farim Mitzrayim v'yitzeinu Hashem Elokeinu misham biyad chazaka v'zrayim netuya. And we know that it was not just then, but v'gam ata we know it says in Micha Kemeit Seischam Eretz Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders when Mashiach comes. Lamrois ha'choshech ha'kafel mechupel shel hagolos yitzienu me'afela lo yirgadol, like it says in the Lashon in the Haggadah. V'noida l'cha shir chodesh, that when Mashiach comes, will give you a new song that will sing for you. And it says, Loi shir chadasha b'lashon nekeva, kim shir chadash b'lashon zachar. What's the difference if we say shir chadasha b'lashon nekeva? Shir chadasha means when it's in the feminine, that's what happened after every golus. The feminine shows that it's like a woman that gives birth, and then she's finished giving birth, and then she gives birth again. Golus and geula is like pregnancy and giving birth. So shir chadasha means that the geula came, but then it's gone again, and we go into golus. Shir chadash means that it's constant. The geula that will be final, that there will be no other golus after it. Shetezu gula shleima v'amitis shenachra golus aydem Mashiach tzidkenu v'meiru v'einu mamish, and that comes, the Rebbe says, through a total devotion to doing what we have to do in even Minhagi Yisrael that make us distinct and different than the nations around us. So that's one piece that speaks about the Mah Nishtana. Now we're going to talk about a totally different piece of the Haggadah. Later on in the Haggadah, he speaks about that Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah said that even though I looked like I was 70 years old, and we'll soon explain what it means. He looked like he was 70 years old, and he was disputing with his colleagues if Yitzias Mitzrayim, if Parshas Vayomer should be said by night, by Kriya Shema. We know we have in the Kriya Shema, we have Shema Yisrael, V'hoyim Shemoya, and Vayomer. Vayomer is about Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's also about mitzvah tzitzis, but the main obligation of tzitzis is not by night. Why do we mention it by night? Because we're supposed to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim by night. The colleagues of Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah said, no, it's enough if you mention Yitzias Mitzrayim by day, in the morning, in the Krishma in the morning, you say Shema v'after, you say Vayim Shemaya, you say Vayomer, you mention Yitzias Mitzrayim, that's enough. But Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah was of the opinion you're supposed to say Yitzias Mitzrayim by night as well. And he said, I wasn't zoiched that should be said by night until Ben Zoyma came along and derived it from a pasuk. It says, "U'mayin tisker shein tzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim kol yimei chayecha hayomim kol yimei chayecha haleilis." So that's how lahavi haleilis we learned out that also we're supposed to say Parshas Vayomer. We're supposed to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim by night. The Rebbe is not focusing on all of that. The Rebbe is going to focus just on this small piece, the introductory part that says, even though I was 70 years old, I did not have the merit of people accepting my view. So he says, "B'yachas lebitei areani kiben shivim shana b'chaf hadimyon Nemer begemara, shel amitay shel davar hoyer Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah tzor men zeh baharbe. He was actually very young when he was appointed to be the head of the bezdin, of the leadership at that time. And what happened was, he looked very young. I believe he was 18 years old when he was appointed. And overnight, after the appointment, El Shahadr leit Mannes Rei Dori Chivarta Nikolai Shmoin Esri Shuris Shalsairis Lavonis Venir Kezakim. Miraculously, his beard grew in overnight when he was appointed, or when he accepted the appointment. 18 rows of white hair, so he should look the part. So therefore, the Rebbe asks, when Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah was like bemoaning the fact and saying, why was he bringing this in? He was bringing this in that despite my being 70 years old, still and all I didn't merit that my colleagues should listen to me. But if you're only looking like 70 years old, why should anybody listen to you? It's not looks that matter. What matters is, if you're 70 years old, okay, you're a sage, you're a wise person. It makes sense that you should wonder why isn't anybody accepting your opinion. But if you only look like 70 years old, why was he like surprised that people didn't accept his opinion? The fees are built in moving on number b'emshcha dvarim. V'loy zachisi cholum. Lefi pshutam shal advarim nira shatmiya al v'loy zachisi. Ein navas rak makach shu chacham elagamina uvda shu zakin keben shivim shana. It says harei ani keben shivim shana v'loy zachis t'yamar. Despite the fact that I was like 70 years old, I didn't merit it. V'higdish man rav l'davar u'mishum kacha yitzarech l'natzeyach. If he would have been 70 years old, it means he already investigated this, and therefore he should have been successful in his dispute. Shetia halacha k'maisai. Ram mi'achar shohay rak nira kezaken misarer habasis la'ataina shetzrich aliyas halacha k'maisai. It all falls apart. Why should we think that the halacha should be like him? Why is he like wondering? But you're not 70 years old just because you have these 18 strands of white in your beard.
You ever see the Rebbe say that?
He's saying that the
Zachisi. You ever see the Rebbe say?
No. So he's teaching us the word zachisi v'loy zachisi kipirish harav. That loy zachis tiamri tzis m'srayim ba'leilos means that it's like the pshat of loy zachis tiamri tzis m'srayim ba'leilos is like the pirish to the Bartanura. So he says, ach yaduam sham misholim v'adugmois einam misholim stam. When there is in Torah something appears like something else, it's not just we're bringing a metaphor, an analogy, a mashal for something that's completely unrelated. Ki im mishtal shalim min animshal shalahem. We know, for example, in Chassidus, it brings a lot of times the pasuk that it says, "Mibsari echzel laka." From the way we see things work in my own body, from that I can understand how Hashem does something. Even though we know it's completely different, but still, there's a certain comparison that we derive from it. A person has 10 kochs nefesh, he has intellect, he has emotions, there are 10 spheres above, also seichel and midas by Hashem. And many, many other examples. A person has the nefesh come into the body, the same thing above, there's oiris and kelim. Why? How can we compare the two? Because the reason why I have seichel and midas down here is because it came from above. That's why my seichel and midas down here could be a mashal for above. In a similar vein, if we're saying that someone is imitating the idea of being old, that means that there's something to it. There's some reality to it. V'im kein uvdazu atzma shenira kezakin Nevas mekach shemabchina ruchnis haya omnam zakin b'shivim shana. The fact that from above they made a miraculous thing that overnight he got white hair in his beard is because he was deserving of those white hairs. Those white hairs were made for him. Biologically he was born 18 years ago, but he was really a white-haired type of person. The Arizal says in the Kabbalah terminology that a person, that Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah was really reincarnated, and if you add the years that he was in the previous Gilgul, so now he was 70 years. So the fact that he looked 70 years was not just something superficial. It wasn't just makeup. It wasn't make-believe. It was because physically he expressed a level that he was at spiritually. Since he knew that these white hairs really belonged to him, it wasn't just costume jewelry. It wasn't just a fake thing. Why, if so, since I'm really deserving of this, why didn't I merit it? That was the point of his being elderly, that he was hoping and he was expecting that the halacha should follow his view. We know that Torah affects changes in the physical world. Since Torah and the spiritual held that he was of a level of 70 years, so it impacted his physical, most external being, that is most external part of his body, the most ancillary part of his body, which is the hair, also manifested his being old. And it says that the Gemar Din, that the conclusion of a halacha in the Torah makes it upon the person, makes the things and the facts on the ground, the physical, biological world to change. The Rebbe is not saying things just in a vacuum. Everything over here is a lesson, especially the Haggadah is meant to be a lesson. We, our neshamas were all here before. We are recycled. A person could think this looks impossible for me. I know who I am. I'm not my grandfather. I'm not some rabbi in the shtetl. I'm not somebody that's living the times of the Beis HaMikdash. I'm living in America with all the challenges that I have on my spiritual thing. And I'm saying to myself, this is beyond me. I can't take this on. All of ladas she'asui li'izgalois b'kirboi hatoiv she'minhag Gilgul ha'kodim shaloi. Just like we said about Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah, that he literally got white hair because the previous Gilgul impacted him, that with the age of the previous Gilgul, he became now 70 years old. So the same thing, we are able to call upon our previous Gilgul for earlier powers and strength to overcome things that we believe ourselves not possible to overcome. You could think, okay, I could raise up my intellect higher, my emotions could be better. Even just like the hairs of Rabbi Elazar Ben Azariah turned white, the most external part of him, the same thing. My previous incarnations, my previous Gilgul can help me and assist me in my most external battles in getting things done right in my thought, in my speech, in my action. So the Rebbe says a very interesting question. If we're going to talk about past lives, so then we should talk also not just about the positive things of my past lives. What about the negative? Don't I have baggage from my past life? And this is where Yiddishkeit and Chassidus and Kabbalah differs from Lahavdil, the Goyish concept and Eastern religions of karma. Karma follows people, they're stuck with what they did in the previous life. The Rebbe says that's not the way it works with the negative. It's only the positive energy from the previous life that I carry with me into this life, not the negative. Yesh makom l'chura lishoel im mitztaref mein yanim shebegilgul hakoydem alo l'chura gam hara litztaref mi yedea eichaya matzavi begilgul hakoydem u'menayin yikach koiches le'avik barav alas avidasai. You're telling me I'm going to be stronger because I have the power from a previous Gilgul. Maybe just the opposite. The power of a previous Gilgul is from the negative things that I did then. And it's going to undermine me and weaken me. Hatshuva lakach. And this is a very important thing that the Rebbe says, and he's going to apply it in the next paragraph in a very practical way, in another way as well. Mitziyusai shalatoy v'nitzchis. Good is everlasting. Good is connected with Hashem. Goodness is connected with Kedusha. Kedusha loizazim and kaima. Kedusha is everlasting. Quote, I'm doing a mitzvah. The mitzvah took me 3 minutes. But in the spiritual realms, this union that I'm taking place with Hashem is unending. It's everlasting. Avol, as opposed to that, hara einoi mitzias klal. All bad is ki'im helam v'hester. It has no independent existence. It's only something that's there to conceal the good. So how do we make sure that it doesn't follow us into the next life? The punishments that a neshama receives or that a person receives, we know, is not because Hashem is chas v'shalom mean and wants to punish us. Every type of punishment is really a means of cleansing the neshama, removing the stains, removing the damage that was done through the Avera. Whether he received a physical punishment in this world or he received a spiritual punishment in the next world, or another possibility. So if either of these things took place, so then no negativity is now transmitted from his previous life to this life, and therefore doesn't interfere with anything he's trying to grow spiritually. And how much more so what happens with the bad? The Chazal say that if a person does tshuva, not out of fear, not out of some other reason, but he does it out of a love for Hashem, so then the very tshuva transforms any intentional sins that he did into merits. So then for sure there's no remnant of his past life to undermine any good that he wants to do now. So in summation, what happens is, the good of his previous Gilgul will assist him now to overcome anything negative, and the bad of the previous Gilgul is wiped away. And here the Rebbe is going to use this idea about how bad is not everlasting and good is forever to answer a general idea about how we could expect Mashiach. The Rebbe is, as we know, something that always occupied the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said that Mashiach is ready to come any minute and is coming any minute and so on. How could that be? We know how small we are. We know how little we are. And the only thing is that the Rebbe always says we're kenanas ha'imid al gabe anok. We are midgets, but we're standing on the shoulders of giants. In other words, we might be very small, but our small mitzvah that we're doing now is in addition to all the good that Yidden have been doing for the last 2,000 years of Golus. So it's cumulative. It adds up. And therefore, we're able to bring the Geulah. So the Rebbe is going to ask the same question like before. What about all the bad things that went on for 2,000 years that Yidden did? Davar ze mishamish mayna gam l'shoyalim keitzad yitachin sha'adoyres ha'koidmin lo yizachol l'gilui ha'mashiach v'ilu ata achsher dara. Is then the generation ready? Is then generation appropriately made up to be able to receive the Geulah bitmiyah? Niska l'gilui ha'mashiach. So the Rebbe says, first of all, b'dereinu kayam gam atoiv sha'adoyres ha'koidmin kanam. But the negative,
Going away.
the negative is gone. The negative is not here anymore. Because the negative, through all the different things, through the tshuva, and through passing away, and through the whatever punishments, or whatever it is, those have been erased. So it's only the positive that adds up. Since it's only the positive that adds up, so we already have 2,000 years of positivity. And maybe a tiny little bit of negativity from our generation.